Hey guys, Dan here. I just want to make sure that every person on YouTube that is a subscriber of mine is aware of the misconception that has been spread throughout the micro national community, saying that the Dan Army still exists, that the Dan Army is nothing more than just a shadow organization and such, a Nerf shadow organization, or something along those lines. And I want to make it very clear here. It no longer exists. The Dan Army ceased to exist after June 25th of 2020. Did it exist prior to June 25th of 2020? Yes, but afterwards it no longer even existed. In fact, it still doesn't exist at this point, as we're reaching pretty much a year, on the 25th of this year would be a year since the official date that the Dan Army was disbanded. The Dan Army no longer exists. And just about every single person who supposedly had been going after me since May or June of 2020 in a targeted harassment campaign against me, which, might I add, yeah, I may have done some things that are pretty messed up that people might say, yeah, you need to stay out of the community or something. But little does Lucino Republic really care about is that, yeah, I have changed, but he seems to care more about bullying and less like anything else. And there is one other thing I'm going to cover, but rather the main topic for today is how recently someone actually claimed, asking me where can he join the Dan Army. I'm just going to answer that question. You cannot join it. It no longer exists. According to certain people on MicroWiki, it still exists. But unfortunately, that is far from the truth. It no longer even exists. It doesn't even exist anymore. And unfortunately, I will be copyright claiming any specific videos where basically it is just edited to a point where every single thing I mentioned is cut out, except for the parts that they want. Another thing I'm going to have to mention is this. Now, Logan Medlin had specific videos of mine basically modified to cut out what he didn't want. So he basically had the very things he wanted in place. Saying that, that I claimed Little St. James Island and a few other things, which literally is bullshit. Actual bullshit. I never claimed that goddamn island in the first place. For him to go around saying that I actually claimed the island is just pure nonsense. And not to mention the fact that this literally resulted in me actually having to literally step away from actual videos for a while and start making Plotagon videos, because Plotagon videos are easier to make, and not to mention they cannot be faked as easily, because you'll easily notice if someone decided to cut out a clip of that particular video, because it wouldn't make any sense. And since recently I've discontinued Plotagon content, and might also be thinking about getting a camera of my own, one that is separate from an iPhone, that I can actually start filming videos on, and potentially ensuring that I can actually use video editing software and learning how to use video editing software to improve the quality of my videos. most of my videos as of now are absolute crap. When it comes down to CRC News is what replaces Dan Republic News. And to which replaced the already existing Dan Army Republic News, which replaced Dan Army News and such. But funny enough, one of the most heavily viewed videos on my channel, and the very video that allowed for me to get even more views than my friend Christopher Clayton, was indeed a video from the Dan Army News video site and such. And then there's the entire problem here. The Dan Army, the reason why it no longer exists, I can literally just list at least a few reasons why it no longer even exists. The first reason being the most important thing here. It wasn't exactly too inclusive. When I mean too inclusive, all of the plans for the Dan Army didn't make any sense. So basically, it's more like a sense of it being realistic. The fact that most of the goals were not achievable because they were completely unrealistic. And I started this group in 2014 only for it to basically fall apart 5 years into it. Basically for it to have already been on life support. And by its 6th year in existence, it was already on life support as is. It pretty much wasn't gaining any new members. And I highly doubt that if I even started my micronation, if I didn't start my micronation any sooner, I would have just had no choice but to say, I'm sorry, I have to quit it. And technically, I wouldn't have to pass it on because no one would actually want it. The second reason is simply because of the fact that a lot of the projects that we had planned, this also ties into the first reason, basically were expensive or rather unproven. The third reason, it was not going to work. And also, the third reason also includes controversy and the fact that it literally contradicted itself to some degree, where it claims that it was going to keep the peace, but yet it was always starting wars. Wars that were pointless, and not to mention, very not worth fighting. A lot of the Nerf wars that were started because of it were 100% preventable. Except for the fact that the Dan Army no longer exists. Like, it no longer exists because it contradicted itself in many ways, had goals that were unachievable and unrealistic. And not to mention the fact that everywhere it basically set up shop, like the two or three places that tried to set up shop, it essentially started conflict. Which, might I add, is no surprise. It's no real surprise that that is the case. But then there's another reason. No one really cares all that much now about the entire prospect that the quote-unquote Dan Army is still around. Just because it's mentioned on the CRC and its micro wiki page doesn't mean it's no longer around. To some people, they say, oh, it's still around. But in this case, it doesn't mean that it's still around. In fact, it's no longer even around. Basically, the organization, in this case, no longer exists. And is likely to never return because of the fact that all of the targeted harassment also targeted the Dan Army name. The Dan Army name was basically memed to oblivion by the very people going after me. And these people tried to say that they're just trolling. Not only were they not trolling, but the fact is, there's also one other issue. Whenever I basically uploaded a video, in the comments section, there would be this one user that would literally just post a link to to some sort of hookup website, which I'm not even going to say what it is because it's literally just in the freaking name. And they literally say at a specific timestamp in the video that's where the website link was on and such. This is not exactly something that is literally isolated to me. This has happened to several other people too. It has literally happened to other people as well on YouTube. It's not just me that would always be targeted by these bots. But for some odd reason or another, because of one particular video I posted, which I removed, and when I was mentioning that these bot accounts were posting these links, I was basically being compared to Alex Jones from InfoWars by the very people who basically thought that this was okay. But when it comes down to like TRC knowing where I live at this point, it's not really too much of a surprise how one video of mine that I uploaded somewhere in 2019 or 2018 basically led to me getting doxxed, which is why it's no longer up anymore. And I do apologize for the misconception that the Dan Army is still around. In fact, something to close off the video here. It no longer exists. For those people who say that it still exists, it no longer exists. I do apologize for the fact that many of you guys must have been misled.